Leicester have got away with one. Will City get away with one?
There's no question that if City can find a good legal argument, they will run those arguments. The precise drafting of the rules seems to assist City. So there could be a potential point there for City, and City may well argue that. City's starting point has to be they didn't do any of these things.
I love that message from you, and big Celtic fan. These rules are a farce, Jim. I wouldn't be surprised if Manchester City end up being awarded points and not deducted by the time their high-flying lawyers poke holes through them. Well, you know, taking up what Ewan, big Celtic fan, is saying, Stefan, it's clear the rules were not watertight. And hence Leicester have profited as a result. No points deduction for them. It's a different case completely. But why shouldn't Manchester City's high-flying lawyers, as Big Ewan calls them, exploit the system as well? They'll have the best legal team in the planet.
Well, the starting point is everybody that goes into an independent commission will look for both factual arguments and legal arguments. And there's no question that if City can find a good legal argument in relation to some of those breaches, they will run those arguments. They ran those arguments at CAS and they will run them again here.
But they won't need to, because they've got irrefutable, unequivocal, undeniable evidence that the charges against them are not.
Well,
they won't need to have a technicality. They'll be able to get straight down to business.
They've said it many times.
Does Leicester's situation give City hope of any sort? I know the two cases are totally unrelated.
I think there's a specific area in respect of Mancini where the precise drafting of the rules seems to assist City, because the rules in respect of what you needed to declare to the league in respect of your manager's contract seems to have been quite simple and quite short, and was not what City had been charged with. City had been charged with failing to disclose all of the details and all of the contracts relating to the manager. However, that was not the rule in 2009 to 2013. The rule was actually much simpler, and it merely said that you needed to have a contract with your manager that was filed within 7 days. And therefore, if they follow the same construction route, they will not imply or infer that there are additional clauses that we should read into whatever the rules said. So there could be a potential point there for City, and City may well argue that. But of course, I think, you know, Simon is correct that City's starting point has to be that on a factual basis they didn't do any of these things, and that will, I assume, be their starting point. That doesn't mean that you don't also run arguments in the alternative.
You fire the bullets you can.
And back up arguments to try and prevent
Can I just take you back to Leicester for a second, if you don't mind, Jim?
Go on.
Do you think Leicester are going to get some shrapnel for 23-24?
Well, there's natural shrapnel anyway, because what we know is that they start the year, let's say 130.
The reason I'm asking, Jim,
130.
the reason why I'm asking is they can still get done for points, because there's still
in this season.
Yeah. Because I think that they might get out of jail for Dewsbury Hall, and the 10 million that Chelsea have paid for compensation for the manager might get them across the line. But they're still on the cart for 23-24 and potential points for this season, which would be done in about January, wouldn't it?
Well, so let's be clear. 23-24 will have Dewsbury Hall and Maresca compensation.
Yeah, which is 10 million quid, isn't it?
But their cap won't be 105, it will be 83, because of course they spent a season in the championship. So they have a lower cap, but they do have some amounts that will offset that.
Yeah.
Furthermore, they sold Harvey Barnes just after the start of the year for 23-24. So they've probably got kind of 80 million maybe player trading profits, and Maresca maybe 90.
But they're up against it again, aren't they?
They are up against it because their starting point, because we know that they breached by 20 million for 22-23. So all you do is you knock off that year, the third year back. And so you know broadly they start the year at around about 130. And you also know that it was a tough financial year because they're in the championship. So you know that they're gonna broadcast revenues probably crashed, I don't know, 70 million quid.
60 million,
So even if they held match day and commercial at the same levels, and that's going to be a challenge, and even if they reduce the wage bill to sub £100 million,
still going to be challenging.
Again a challenge, they're still probably going to breach for 23-24.
I think we'll agree, Stefan, that Leicester City, in layman's terms, have got away with one here. They've won the date currently. I know what you're saying, Simon. And then you look briefly at Aston Villa. And Villa have revealed how close they came to breaching last season with what would have led to a points deduction. Is this the difference, Stefan? Villa's Director of Football Operations, Demi Vidagani, is saying we found ourselves in a situation we had to make an important profit to avoid being in breach with the rules. It was very challenging. There was a bomb with the countdown, and we were there to cut the cable. We arrived at the last second with this problem. What did they do? They managed to sell Douglas Luiz to Juventus. Had they not done that, they were going to get a spanking in terms of points deduction. Is that how close it comes between ambition and punishment in this era?
Well, it does for a side like Villa, and they will also have the problem this season as well, because they also have some of the consequences of almost failing the prior year. It's worth noting that Villa also moved their accounting reference date from the 31st of May to the 30th of June, and that allowed them that extra month to do those deals that we're talking about. And even then, the only way they got those deals across the line was to throw in 2 swaps from Juventus. And we've got all the details of exactly what that deal looks like now, because it's published by Juventus, who are a listed company, so we know exactly what was paid and what was paid for the players that came in and all of that stuff. But they were very close, and that's why, and that's why they also, I would say, also didn't circumvent FFP in the way that we talked about earlier. But they legitimately moved their accounting reference. The
characterisation of it, Jim, just so you're clear, is it's not something they knew on the 30th of April. They would have known their position around about March, that ultimately where they were going to finish in the league with give or take a few million quid on merit payments, that they've got depreciation, that they've got amortization, that they've got, and they've got wages. They will know, if they've got any financial acumen about them, that actually we've got a bit of a problem coming. So they haven't got, it's June the 29th, we better sell by June the 30th. They know 3 or 4 months earlier.
Well, they moved the date. They moved the accounting reference on the 28th of February.
So this big thing that, it was like we knew that we were in real trouble. You knew 4 or 5 months earlier. You have to plan for it. That's every business.
Well, no, I think what the clubs are saying, I think what Villa and Newcastle are both saying publicly now, is that they thought they had to sell they knew they had to sell a player.
Yeah.
The challenge was when it actually came down to it, there was no market, and so right at the death. And people did hold off, and they ended up having to do deals around swaps.
But Stefan, does this not prove that you can get punished for having ambition? Villa get into the Champions League. Well, let's go for it now. We're going to go for it now. And that's what they were doing. And then they had to, and Simon's right about the timing, but it came to light, we've got to get some money in. Who have we got? Douglas Luiz, sell him.
Yeah, look, we had it with Newcastle as well. I mean, clearly the rules as they are currently drafted do create this disincentive to invest, to try and break into that top 4. And you are at risk of getting points deductions.
Stefan, just before you leave us, I've been using this phrase now. I don't think we're wrong in using it this morning. Leicester have got away with one. Will City get away with one?
We've talked about it many times. City case is much more complicated and won't turn on like a very minor legal point. In some ways you could say that City are in a trickier position having seen this situation, because we've seen the fallibility of the Independent Commission, because the Independent Commission can get it, according to the appeal board, completely wrong. So City may end up in a situation where they actually get a very unsatisfactory decision by the Independent Commission, want to go to an appeal, but actually find that a lot of the issues have already been resolved in a way that they can't overturn an appeal. Because appeal tends to be related to the legal side of things as opposed to the factual side of things. Once that Independent Commission comes up with the findings of fact, City are likely to be stuck with a lot of those findings of fact. So when it then comes to appeal, because obviously if City lose, they will appeal, they're stuck with probably a fairly limited set of things that they'll be able to appeal. So I think you can look at it both ways. It's positive in some respects, negative in others, but a lot will depend on the quality of that Independent Commission.
Stefan, as always, thanks for stopping by. Stefan Borson, of course.
Jim White and Simon Jordan. Monday to Friday mornings from 10 on AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.